On June 12, 1993, the election purportedly won by Chief MKO Abiola was annulled by his close friend and ally, General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida. The real question is, why was this election annulled, despite having such a strong personality in his corner? Welcome to Afriverse. On today's episode, we shall be looking into the life of Chief MKO Abiola. What happened before the June 12 election and after the June 12 election? Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, as it helps us to continue to put out great content and serve our viewers better. Do stay tuned and enjoy the ride. Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola was born on August 24, 1937 in Abeokuta, Ogun State, southwest Nigeria, to the family of Sawalu and Suliat Wurola Abiola. He is the 23rd child of his father. His father was a produce trader who primarily traded cocoa, and his mother traded in kola nuts. His name, Kashimawo, means "let us wait and see if he survives," an allusion to his parents' uncertainty that he would survive infancy like the 22 children before him. He ultimately did. Unfortunately, Abiola's unique status as a long-awaited child to make it through infancy did not protect him from the callous hands of poverty that his parents met him with. Luckily, unlike most people around him, Abiola was brilliant and would do anything to stay in school. Staying in school at Baptist Boys' School for MK Abiola meant that he had to pay for his education by singing and drumming at parties. MK Abiola said he would occasionally wake up at 3 a.m. and walk 4 miles to fetch firewood and sell it, and use the money to support his family. After secondary school, he earned a scholarship to study accountancy at the University of Glasgow, married his first wife, Simbiat, and had his first 2 children before returning to Nigeria. In Nigeria, he worked briefly for Guinness and Lagos University Teaching Hospital before serving as chief accountant for Pfizer. It is essential to mention that MK Abiola moved to Nigeria in the mid-1960s, slightly before the Nigerian Civil War, which began in 1967 and ended in 1970. MK Abiola, ever hungry for a better life than the one he was born in, soon moved to the Nigerian division of the US Telecommunications Company, International Telegraph and Telephone, ITT. The brief story is that Abiola rose through the ranks at ITT to become Regional Vice President of Africa and the Middle East and the CEO of ITT Nigeria. In 1968, when MK Abiola joined ITT, Nigeria was trying to win the civil war in the eastern region as quickly as possible. The military needed communication gear to support their activities, and they went to ITT to purchase them. This transaction eventually changed MK Abiola's life, causing him to become friends with many young military officers, some of whom would later become Nigeria's heads of state. In 1969, as the Civil War progressed, the military was intensely focused on the war and did not pay ITT what they owed them for the 1968 deal. During that period, MK Abiola was still on ITT staff. ITT was broke and needed the military to repay its debts. To recoup the debt, ITT sent a delegation to the military on April 4, 1969. The meeting was supposed to be with the Army Colonel in charge of the contract. Unfortunately, the Colonel refused to see the ITT delegates for over 3 days. The meeting's lack of success annoyed MK Abiola, and he will eventually return alone to confront the dodgy Colonel. Chief MK Abiola, known for having an animated personality, went as early as 7 a.m. to wait for the Inspector of Signals, the famed Army Colonel, who was in charge of the contract. Both men had an altercation. However, Inspector of Signals, Colonel Murtala Mohammed, the most influential Nigerian soldier at the point and leader of the July 1966 counter-coup, did not take MK Abiola's boldness lightly and promised that the ITT was not going to get their money, especially as they already made a 20% profit off the contract. Firstly, he took the intervention of Brigadier Hassan Usman Katsina, the Chief of Army Staff, and the Ministry of Defense's Permanent Secretary, Yusuf Gobir, to appease both parties and ITT to recover its money. In the end, Colonel Murtala Mohammed and several other soldiers were impressed by Chief MKO Abiola's nearly suicidal courage. After recovering the debt, Abiola returned to the ITT and met his boss in an unprofessional circumstance. Describing what he saw, Abiola said, "My white boss was misbehaving with the ladies and chasing them around, probably drunk." As described by Max Solium in his book, Soldiers of Fortune, he, meaning MKO Abiola, got a photographer to take embarrassing photos of his boss cavorting about drunk and showed the photos to senior management of ITT in London. Abiola successfully demanded that his boss should be fired and that he should instead be appointed managing director of ITT's Nigerian office to replace him, as well as being paid a salary. Abiola asked ITT senior management to grant him shares in ITT. When they refused, Abiola decided to resign and form his own company called Radio Communications Nigeria Limited, RCNL. Just before departing, Abiola informed ITT that RCNL had secured a lucrative contract worth £30 million and that he would involve ITT if they were to sold off half of ITT's shares to him. Abiola admitted they sold the shares to him, but the truth was that by we, he meant Radio Communications Nigeria Limited, had not landed any £30 million contract, but it was too late for ITT to do anything about it. The shares became a gold mine. He bought his first plane in 1972 and took his elderly father for a first test drive. They flew together from Lagos to Kano. His father later died on 9th July 1978, aged 97. As Chief MKO Abiola rose financially, so did his business acumen for raking in money into his enterprises at any possible means. The Americans would have loved him for sure, because he was a capitalist through and through. In 1974, the Ministry of Communications invited telecom companies to bid for a contract to provide telephone exchanges throughout Nigeria. The Director General of Communications, Theophilus Oluwole Akindele, and the Federal Commissioner of Communications disagreed over the contract bidding process. The commissioner was the young army officer with whom Abiola had nearly come to blows with 5 years earlier. By now, he had been promoted to brigadier, and in Abiola's words, had become a close friend following the earlier misunderstanding. The disagreement between the commissioner and the Director General became public and was reported in the national newspapers. The Commissioner for Communications won the power struggle, and the Cabinet Office sent Akindele on indefinite leave. In Akindele's absence, the Ministry of Communications awarded ITT a contract worth $138.5 million to provide telephone exchanges in 38 locations throughout Nigeria. Thus, MKO Abiola's rag to riches arc was complete, but being MKO Abiola, he had barely begun. As the years flew by, Chief MKO Abiola became even closer friends with top military officers. Most of the July 1996 set, Murtala Mohammed, Sani Abacha, Muhammadu Buhari, Ibrahim Babangida, etc. With more money in his pocket, Chief MKO Abiola lived all the life he could have dreamt of unhindered. As has been written in his dossier, Chief MKO Abiola invested heavily in Nigeria and West Africa. He set up Abiola Farms, Abiola Bookshops, Radio Communications Nigeria Limited, Wonder Bakeries, Concord Press, Concord Airlines, Summit Oil International Limited, Africa Ocean Line, Habib Bank, Deca WA Limited, and Abiola Football Club, also known as Abiola Babes. He was also the chairman of G15 Business Council, president of Nigeria Stock Exchange, patron of the Kwame Nkrumah Foundation, patron of the Webb Du Bois Foundation, a trustee of Martin Luther King Foundation, and director of International Press Institute. He did not stop there. Chief MKO Abiola's expansive business acumen saw him team up with another military man in 1983, General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua, the de facto vice president during Obasanjo's military regime. Bamanga Tukur, the once governor of Old Gongola State, and Raymond Opesi, the founder of the Nigerian television station African Independent Television, to establish Africa Ocean Lines. The firm began operations in 1984 using chartered vessels before acquiring 2 cargo ships in 1986 with a capacity of 958 TEUs. The shipping firm's routes linked the major shipping ports along the West African coast with the United Kingdom and Northern Europe. But before Chief MKO Abiola's late 80s business expansion, some major political events happened. Chief MKO Abiola had become so close to Nigeria's incompetent yet brutal military regimes that human rights activist Dr. Beko Ransom Kuti famously said that there is no difference between Abiola and the military. Chief MKO Abiola was instrumental to coups in Nigeria in many ways, but one particular coup stood out. It was the one immediately after the 1983 presidential election, which saw Alhaji Shehu Shagari win the highly rigged re-election bid. Chief MKO Abiola at this point was no longer interested in just being rich. After the Obasanjo-Yar'Adua regime returned Nigeria to democracy in 1979, Chief MKO Abiola picked an interest in becoming president. In 1980, he joined the ruling National Party of Nigeria (NPN) and was elected as the state chairman of NPN. MKO Abiola put a lot of money, some of which came directly from ITT, into the NPN infrastructure in hopes of winning the party's ticket in 1983. But as Karl Mayer wrote in his book, "The House Has Fallen, Nigeria in Crisis," in 1982, Abiola was an influential member of Shagari's NPN, well out of the Yoruba mainstream that backed Awolowo's United Party of Nigeria. He used his newspaper group Concord to attack Awolowo. For Abiola, the NPN was his best route to the presidency because Shagari in Otana was expected to give way to Yoruba man in the NPN presidential nomination in 1963. Abiola figured that he would get the nod. The only problem was that Shagari decided to run again. Abiola quit the party. As fate would have it badly for Shagari, his first term had been won under a judicial technicality, and his tenure was filled with tons of imbalances, especially in religious riots in the north that led to deaths and displacements. He also had a regular feature such as corruption, incompetence, and structural frustration. But the Nigerian army was smart. Their approach to taking over power involved coup baiting and needed an excellent reason to take over. This was where MKO Abiola and Nigerian elites were very useful. According to a statement given by Karl Mayer by Ibrahim Babangida, a leader in the coup that deposed Alhaji Shehu Shagari, Karl Mayer asked, "Nigerians always welcome the military intervention because we have not yet developed mentally and the values and virtues of democracy. You admit you are waiting for an opportunity?" he asked Babangida. Babangida responded, "You see, we are very smart people. We don't intervene when we know the climate is not good for it or the public will not welcome it. We wait until there's frustration in the society. In all the coups, we find there is always has been one frustration or the other. Anytime there's frustration, we step in, and then there is demonstration welcoming the redeemers." Kamaya pondered. At that, the evil genius broke into a deep, self-mocking chuckle at the notion of the military as redeemers. As cynical as his words might have sounded, Babangida spoke a truth that many Nigerian intellectuals have been loath to admit. The general populace, and sometimes even the most strident pro-democracy activists, repeatedly applaud soldiers who overthrew governments they did not support. It happened in 1966 with the January Boys' Coup, in 1975 with the overthrow of Gowon's military government, and in 1983 with the ousting of Shagari's elected administration. The pattern was to repeat itself in 1985 when Babangida himself came to power, and again in 1993 when Abacha, the man reviled as Nigeria's worst dictator, assumed control. Businessmen Politicians and media tycoons played a vital role in the coups. General Babangida continued, "We couldn't have done it without the collaborators in the civil society, collaborators in the media, collaborators among the people who have the means. Because the means were not easily available, but we received some from people who were convinced it was the right thing to do." Ramaya continued, "At the time of the coup, the friendship between Abiola and Babangida went back 9 years. They had met in 1947 in Lagos when Abiola was peddling British Raka radio systems to the military. Babangida, a commander in the Reconnaissance Regiment, was sent to evaluate Abiola's wares. From that time, the relationship developed and he was always around." Babangida confirmed the widely held popular belief that Abiola had supported both coups against Shagari in 1983 and later against Buhari in 1985, with the money and editorial support from his Concord newspaper. Babangida replied, "He did, he said so. Of course, he was also very good at trying to mold the thinking of the media. We relied on him a lot for that. There was both the media support and the financial support." Chief MKO Abiola was keen on being president, even if he had to wait for his friends in the military to be done. MKO Abiola supported and waited for General Buhari, whose short term was so awful that his friends that brought him into power had to take him out through another coup that brought in General Babangida. However, General Ibrahim Babangida, Nigeria's second longest serving head of state of 8 years, soon needed to leave office and hand over, as he had promised, to a democratically elected government. It was time for another election. MKO Abiola was ready this time around. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash a like and subscribe to this channel. Guys, subscription is free, so please smash that button. Thanks for your support. Now let's get back to the video. As earlier established by General Babangida's alleged revelations on how MKO Abiola sponsored the Alhaji Shehu Shagari coup in 1983 and the General Muhammadu Buhari coup in 1985. There were rumors that he allegedly sponsored the Shagari coup because Shagari refused to give him presidential tickets under the MPN for the second term. As for the General Buhari 1985 coup, he was ousted not just because he had a disastrous performance, but for other alleged reasons. General Buhari was allegedly presented with a proposal from the International Monetary Fund (IMF) called Structural Adjustment Program (SAP). When Buhari was presented with this proposal in 1982, he rejected it despite his shortcomings in economics, as clearly observed in his tenure. He still knew that SAP was not beneficial to the Nigerian people, and he threw the proposal out of the window and refused to implement it. He believed it wouldn't help Nigerian industries grow and the people would lack jobs. General Buhari was eventually ousted in a 1985 coup d'etat, and General Babangida was installed, who immediately implemented SAP. There are rumors that MKO Abiola was behind the push for this policy. In 1960, Nigerian intellectuals understood that they needed the Nigerian markets to grow, so they needed to protect the Nigerian markets against Western economies. They came up with a policy they call ISI, which stands for Import Substitution Industrialization. This policy was to help the Nigerian markets and save the Nigerian markets from influx of goods, meaning that it prevented the Europeans that had more advanced markets from importing any product or good that a Nigerian company manufactures. Take for instance, if you have Nigerians manufacturing batteries, for instance, you can't import the same battery into Nigeria because of that. So this policy, the ISI policy, was helping to curtail that, so that the Nigerian markets can grow and then compete with these bigger markets when they are ready to compete. The enemies of Nigeria saw that Nigeria was becoming a manufacturing and producing powerhouse and became hell-bent on destroying such notion. The elites of Nigeria deceived the Nigerian state by selling the idea to the people that if they allowed foreign goods to enter Nigeria, it will be beneficial to the economy. People like Professor Adedeji wrote countless reports to refute the claims of the benefit of SAP. Mind you, Professor Adedeji was no slouch. He was the head of economics of the United Nations at the time. After SAP was implemented, the Naira crashed from 1 Naira to $1 to 10 Naira to $1. Over time, industries closed as most couldn't compete with the already established foreign markets. African revolutionary and Afrobeat legend Fela Anikulapo Kuti and Nigerian symbol for democracy, late Chief MKO Abiola, had an unusual battle. Fela accused him of being a stooge of the CIA and ITT. There are alleged reports that the ITT was a money laundering front and sponsored coups all over the world and especially in Nigeria. He chastised MKO Abiola over his alleged unwholesome deal with the American telephone firm ITT, claiming Abiola defrauded Nigeria of millions of naira over a telephone deal for all homes across Nigeria, which he allegedly refused to install but later pocketed the money. Fela released the song in 1980 called International Thief Thief, ITT, where he heavily criticized Abiola for his alleged crimes. However, son of the late legal luminary Chief Alao Aka Bashorun, Shegun Aka Bashorun, has debunked the story that MKO Abiola looted ITT on Nigerian government. Alao Bashorun, his father, who is seen as the godfather of civil liberty struggle in Nigeria, was a lawyer to both Fela and MKO Abiola in his lifetime. Shegun Bashorun, who allegedly stumbled upon documents inside his father's chambers after his father passed away in October 1, 2005, gave details of Fela's battle with MKO Abiola. Chief MKO Abiola's presidential admission was met with many roadblocks, especially from human rights advocates who saw him as an extension of the military. In addition, his public relationship with Ibrahim Babangida and Sani Abacha put him in a precarious situation. There were numerous unexpected nuances in the election itself. For example, General Babangida previously banned politicians from taking part because, among other things, they had policed political groups. However, Babangida had his own personal bias, one of which was that he had given MKO Abiola some cash to help with his campaign. Later year, Babangida told a journalist, "Not a single person from the part of the world he had come from, even his friends, gave more money than I did." However, some significant issues remained unsolved by the MKO's financial support. Dan Agbashe writes in his book, Ibrahim Babangida, Military, Power and Politics. Babangida regarded the 23 presidential aspirants disqualified from participating in the presidential election as the first 11 among the politicians jostled for power. Their ban paved way for the emergence of new political actors on the stage of the transition program. With the first 11 put out in the cold, there were few runners in the field. Two men easily emerged from the thin crowd of presidential aspirants. One was the billionaire philanthropist Bashorun MKO Abiola, who nursed a presidential ambition going back all the way to the Second Republic. Abiola was a leading national executive member and one of the major financiers of the National Party of Nigeria (NPN). He intended to contest the presidential election on the platform of the party in 1983. The party moguls erected obstacles in his way. He quit the party and partisan politics altogether in anger in 1982. He was affected by the ban on former politicians and public office holders and unsuccessfully challenged his ban at the tribunal. With the ban lifted, he joined SDP in January 1993 and was elected the party's presidential flag bearer at this convention in Jos in March that year. The other man was Alhaji Bashir Tofa, who, like Abiola, was a national executive member of NPN. He was the party's national financial secretary. He picked the presidential ticket of the NRC at this convention in Port Harcourt in March 1993. Both men were Babangida's close friends. Babangida was not quite comfortable with this. He says he feared people would accuse him of manipulating the transition program in favor of his friends. He even tried to discourage Tofa from contesting the election. I told him in the presence of 13 of his colleagues. I advised him not to seek for the election. I didn't support him. He was not a winning candidate, Babangida said. Babangida said he supported Abiola's presidential bid and helped him a lot morally and financially in the campaign. He said he gave Abiola 35 million naira. Before Abiola entered the presidential race, he and Babangida talked of the pros and cons and of Abiola's presidential ambition. And when Abiola eventually decided that he wanted to go for it, I supported the idea that he should get it. Babangida had wanted to make Abiola the chairman of the Transition Council because he believed his friend enjoyed tremendous political goodwill. His name was a household name. He had the international contacts, and Nigeria too had a very good chance of having someone like him heading that organization. But some of Babangida's colleagues in the ruling council opposed it. They accepted, though, that Abiola could be a member of the council. Babangida told Abiola he would bring him in as a member and ensure that the members of the Transitional Council elected him chairman. The AFC had decided that the chairman of the Transitional Council should come from the southwest, where Abiola came from. But Abiola rather wanted Babangida to announce him as chairman straight away. He told Babangida that that was how his family wanted it, because they feared that the president might change his mind once he made him an ordinary member. Left to me, said Babangida, I wanted to make him the chairman. Then he dictated and blew it. Chief MKO Abiola's arrogance and behavior worried a lot of politicians and military officers. The man who had the guts to stand up to General Murtala Mohammed, the man who had already started promising to punish certain military officers over disagreements they had, the man who, unlike other previous leaders, had no military experience and lacked the esprit de corps that had protected Nigeria's military corrupt class, and a boisterous, egotistic, agbada-wearing politician. He was going to be a problem, and someone had to deal with it. While there were many who set out to arrest the situation, one stood out. His name, Otto Nzeribe, who was of Southeast extraction. Although many Nigerians wanted Babangida to leave as soon as possible, some wanted him to continue as Nigeria's head of state. Otto Nzeribe and his group, Association for Better Nigeria (ABN), was one of such. The Association for Better Nigeria (ABN) was formed after Ibrahim Babangida's regime abolished all political parties and created two national parties, the National Republican Convention (NRC) and the Social Democratic Party (SDP) in 1991. The primary objective of the ABN was to keep Ibrahim Babangida in power and maintain the military administration that had governed Nigeria for so long. The ABN demonstrated its determination to achieve its objective by putting up billboards in the Nigerian capital Abuja that carried the message like 4 more years, which means the military government should stay in power for another 4 years. The intensity of ABN's pro-government campaigns led many observers to conclude that the federal military government was behind the activities of the association. ABN was basically a one-man show headed by Chief Otto Nzeribe. The other well-known member of the ABN, Abimola Davis, a director of the association, later left the organization. The ABN was not a popular group and was treated with contempt, particularly by pro-democracy groups and most of the Nigerian press. As a result, many of those who were associated with the ABN kept it virtually secret. In its tenacity to endorse continuous military rule, the ABN went to court to prevent the holding of the June 1993 presidential election. The ABN's reason for demanding the injunction was that the leaders of the NRC and the SDP were corrupt politicians. The Campaign for Democracy (CD), a coalition of pro-democracy groups, challenged the ABN on the grounds that it was unconstitutional to canvass for continuation of the military government in Nigeria. The ABN lost the case. After the elections, the ABN went to court again to prevent the release of election results. Chief MKO Abiola, quite belatedly, also had to deal with the lack of overwhelming support from the Yorubas in the West. The Yorubas found it challenging to forget the role he played in Awolowo losing to Shagari, and that he was not in alignment with Awolowo's socialist political creed. MKO Abiola was of course a capitalist to the core, but that would face some resolution after meeting Awoist, who eventually promised to support him. Contrary to what many Nigerians have been overwhelmed with today, and what you might have deeped so far, MKO Abiola was not very different from the military folks he wanted to replace. They were his friends, sponsored his campaign, and some supported him to win so they can get some concessions. But the average Nigerian had a different reason for supporting Chief MKO Abiola. Professor Wole Soyinka, Nigeria's first Nobel laureate, rightly described it thus: "This Nigeria has stopped looking for a messiah light years ago, and all she wants is a good manager. The Nigeria I know does not care if such an individual is a crossed-eyed hunchback, knock-kneed womanizer, or homosexual, atheist, animalist, Muslim, or a Christian born again. The Nigeria I know lays only one condition on credentials of such a hybrid: he or she must be democratically elected." Before now, MKO Abiola had a problem with General Shehu Yaradua, the patron of the SDP, because MKO Abiola refused to pick Atiku Abubakar as his running mate. The SDP presidential primary was contested by Chief MKO Abiola, Alhaji Babagana Kingibe, and Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. At the SDP convention, MKO Abiola was leading Alhaji Babagana Kingibe by a slight margin, but Alhaji Atiku Abubakar came third. Chief MKO Abiola and General Yaradua then struck a deal. General Yaradua had told Atiku Abubakar to step down for Chief MKO Abiola, with the unwritten understanding that Atiku Abubakar will be Chief Abiola's running mate when he wins the primaries, and the People's Front political machine was deployed to support Chief MKO Abiola. Chief MKO Abiola eventually won the primaries. Atiku was the political godson of Yaradua. On the other end, General Babangida also nominated the deputy for Abiola, instead of going with either Babangida or Yaradua's candidates. He settled for Babagana Kingibe, betraying both patron and friend. While ABN was still in court, asking that the election should not hold, military officers were grumbling, and it was uncertain that General Babangida truly wanted to leave power, or at least to MKO Abiola. Despite all the foreboding, the elections went well as planned, with Chief MKO facing NRC's Bashir Tofa. Richard Bond wrote of the events of that period in his book, Nigeria, A New History of a Turbulent Century. In earlier state elections, the NRC had won more governorship than SDP, so it was slightly surprising that the Abiola Kingibe ticket triumphed on June 12. Although the announcement of the results and Tofa's concession letter were halted by the government, enough had come out of the Independent National Electoral Commission and the press to make it clear enough that the SDP had won with over 8.1 million votes to the NRC's over 5.8 million votes. The SDP took 19 states to the NRC's 11, comfortably exceeding the constitutional requirement. Abiola, a Yoruba man, scored huge majorities with over 80% in 5 southwestern states, including Lagos. He even won in Tofa's own ward. His worst performance was in the northern Muslim state of Sokoto, where he only won 20.79% of the votes. He ought to have been declared the winner. The election, so long awaited, went off relatively smooth, although the turnout was low at 35%. This was probably due to the confusion sowed by the ABN as to whether the elections would actually take place and a certain apathy. But Abiola's win set off a struggle within the military hierarchy between those who were willing to accept him as president and those who wanted Babangida or one of his confidants to continue, and those around Abacha, whose Ministry of Defense was still in Lagos, when other ministries had moved to Abuja, who saw this as a chance for Abacha to succeed. With Babangida no longer commanding public support, Abacha was next in line and would become the head of state if the military was to continue. This intrigue was lost on many people. ABN's lawyer, Abimbola Davis, would hold a press conference on July 16, 1993, where he confessed that with the aim of prolonging military administration's stay in power, we were used to create an organized confusion. All of us who participated in this racket never imagined that we would end up in the situation and that blood will be spilled. Abacha's intentional silence has been perceived by many as idiocy and allowed for a great miscalculation on the part of many, including Babangida. That was when the second phase of the plan was initiated. ABN went to court on June 15th to seek an injunction to stop the NEC from releasing further election results. The Abuja High Court, under the Chief Judge of Abuja, Justice Dahiru Saleh, ordered the NEC to stop releasing results. But this decision was not unanimous, as contrary judgments have been handed down by high courts in Lagos and Ibadan to release the remainder of the results. Lagos State High Court Judge Dolapo Akinsoya also issued a ruling restraining the ABN from campaigning for an extension of Babangida's stay in power beyond August 27, 1993. On June 16, 1993, the National Defense and Security Council (NDSC) held a meeting where a committee was created to quickly investigate the aftermath of the election. The committee was headed by General Sani Abacha. Onfurinwosu, the chairman of NEC, at the committee meeting recommended that Abiola should be declared the winner. He was halted by General Abacha, who asked him, "Who do you think you are? You conducted the presidential election that the court prohibited. You helped to cause the current political confusion without support of the members of your commission." Abacha's plan was hatching. A faction of the military was brewing to prevent Abiola from becoming president. One of such persons was Brigadier General David Mark, who allegedly said, "I did shoot Chief Abiola the day the National Electoral Commission (NEC) pronouncing him the elected president." David Mark was loyal to Babangida, but also had a disagreement with Chief MKO Abiola when David Mark was the Minister of Communications. Like many top-ranking officers, he feared Abiola would exert vendetta on them upon assumption of office. Abacha used their fears to his advantage. While all this theatrics was going on, Babangida was under constant pressure to relinquish power, but not to MKO Abiola. General Abacha was reported to have said, "Abiola, retire me, God forbid." To put his pressure in perspective, Abiola's aide recalled military officers being in combative mode and putting pressure on Babangida to retroactively void the election. When he attempted to explain the provisions of the transitions decrees to senior military officers, Professor Omori was sharply reminded by Lieutenant General Dogoyaro that this is a military government. "Professor, you're not part of it." Professor Omori, Babangida's aide and political advisor, would recount a visit to Babangida in which he said, "Babangida was a different man. He was very, very different, morose and coiled in one corner of his sofa." In his account, Professor Omori said Babangida told him, "They will kill me. They will kill the president-elect Chief MKO Abiola if I went ahead with the elections and announced the result." On June 23rd, the election was officially annulled through a letter that was written by Nduka Irabo, the press secretary of Admiral Augustus Akiomo, the de facto vice president of General Babangida's regime. The shocking revelation was that the letter was not signed, dated, or properly written. It was in fact a shock to many members of the federal military government. David Mark said, "I am not even sure Babangida was a major player in the annulment of the election." On June 26th, Babangida addressed the nation to confirm the annulment.
It is true that the presidential election was generally seen to be free, fair, and peaceful. However, there was, in fact, a huge array of electoral malpractices virtually in all the states of the Federation before the actual vote.
Although often touted as the first election, the election was neither free nor fair. In fact, there was massive alleged vote buying. Despite his garnished nature, he had been defeated by people who he thought were his friends. MKO Abiola had one last fight in him. One of the primary issues with General Abacha becoming head of state and Chief MKO Abiola becoming president was that there was evidence that both men had been assured of their respective positions by Babangida. When Babangida ran out of office and appointed an interim government, MKO Abiola had given General Abacha support to remove the interim government so that Abacha would return the power to him after the interregnum. MKO Abiola even allegedly said a reliable general was there for him in the army and supported Abacha's government. He was even said to have nominated some of the people in Abacha's cabinet. The period of Chief MKO Abiola demanding that he be named president via protests, court, lobbying, and campaigning was extensive. In that period, a group was formed on May 15, 1994, called National Democratic Coalition NADECO by a broad coalition of Nigerian Democrats who called on the military government of General Sani Abacha to step down in favor of MKO Abiola. If you have been paying attention, do you remember that the Yorubas were not in support of Chief MKO Abiola? This is an excerpt from Maxwell's book, Nigerian Soldiers of Fortune, which details these accounts. Yoruba traditional rulers also made various contradictory pronouncements about Abiola. Following a meeting between Babangida and traditional rulers on July 2, 1993, the foremost Yoruba traditional ruler, the Oni of Ife, Okunade Sijuwade, he threatened that the Yorubas will succeed if Abiola was not declared president. Less than a month after Abacha seized power in November 1993, the same Oba Sijuwade, who had threatened to pull his people out of Nigeria, led 18 of Yoruba Obas to Dodam barracks on a courtesy visit to Abacha and commended him for preempting and forestalling the imminent state of war and disintegration in Nigeria. The Oba of Lagos, Adeyinka Oyekon, also wrote a letter to Abacha telling him, "It is by the grace of Allah that as a crowning of all your achievements, you have been made head of state and commander-in-chief." Such Yoruba flip-flopping continued in 1994. NADECO had called for a boycott of world elections for delegates to be elected to the Constitutional Conference. Yoruba traditional rulers met at the palace of the Awujale of Ijebu and Siriku Adetona at Ijebu Ode. The Yoruba traditional rulers supported NADECO's call to boycott the Constitutional Conference elections. However, 3 days later, another group of Yoruba traditional rulers met in Ibadan with Lieutenant General Dia, the military administrator of Ogun State, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Kintonde, and the former military governor of the Western Region, Major General Robert Adeyinka Adebayo. At the meeting, the Aleke of Ebaland, Oyebande Lipede, scolded Dia, "You are our son. We see how your fellow Northerners worship their emirs. Have you shown the same respect for us?" After Lieutenant General Dia assured them that the annulled June 12 election will be discussed at the Constitutional Conference, this group of traditional rulers told the public to ignore the earlier May 19 statement calling for a boycott. Conflicting messages from the Yoruba traditional rulers caused tragicomic consequences of Yoruba candidates of the Constitutional Conference. Olufale was elected as a delegate to the conference in his Akure local government area of Ondo State. However, after being declared winner, Olufale refused to accept the victory of his place as a delegate to the conference. MKO Abiola was seen in this period hugging Abacha on national TV. It was difficult to stand on the mandate of a man in cohorts with the enemy. In 1994, full of conviction that he would be president, MKO Abiola did what he thought was best. He made the Epetedo declaration, where he announced himself as president of Nigeria and demanded that Abacha vacate his seat. He said in a nationwide broadcast,
"On the 11th of June 1994, at your request, I claim the secret and popular mandate which you gave me as President and Commander-in-Chief of the Nigerian Armed Forces at the presidential election of June 12, 1993. I invoke the mandate bestowed upon me by my victory in the said election to call on all members of the armed forces and the police, the civil and public services throughout the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to obey only the government of national unity that is headed by me, your duly elected president."
Our patience has come to an end. As of now, from this moment, a new government of national unity is in power throughout the length and breadth of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, led by me, Bashorun MKO Abiola, as President and Commander-in-Chief. I call upon the usurper, General Sani Abacha, to announce his resignation forthwith, together with the rest of his illegal ruling council. General Abacha, the merchant of brutality, arrested MKO Abiola after several days of hiding. Chief MKO Abiola, who was about to be a free man for the last time in his life, compared himself to Nelson Mandela, South Africa's liberator and first black president. If anything, his response to his arrest shows the kind of person MKO Abiola was: an idealistic person who refuses to distinguish between dreams and reality. Chief MKO Abiola spent the rest of his life chasing his dream that eluded him, from the court, challenging his mandate and eventually being charged with treason to imprisonment, then ultimately to house arrest and Abacha's death in 1998. 5 years after, MKO Abiola's mandate was taken from him. An extract from Mark Solion's book, Nigerian Soldiers of Fortune, wrote of his final days. Meanwhile, the detained and secluded Abiola was totally unaware of the unfolding events or of the force that he has been causing outside. He had not been allowed to see any member of his family for 32 weeks since 3rd November 1995. Abiola had been detained at a very inconspicuous house in Kado Housing Estate in Abuja. To avoid attracting attention, the house had only a few guards at the gate. Abiola was kept in a room upstairs with his exercise room equipment downstairs. Apart from his doctor, Ore Falomo, Abiola rarely had guests. Despite his bleak situation, he was usually jovial and often spoken to and joked with his guards. One of Abiola's police guards was Assistant Superintendent of Police, Theodore Bethel Zadok. After Abacha's death, Abiola's detention conditions were eased. Abiola's guards moved him to Gadonasco Barracks in Abuja, as local and international dignitaries began to make their way to see Abiola. They again moved him to the guest house of the Secretary of the Government inside the complex in which the presidential villa was located. Abiola did not know why he was being moved until Sunday, June 28, when the Chief of Army Staff, Major General Bamiyi, and the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Nsikak Edwok, met him at Agoda House, the official residence of the Vice President, inside the presidential compound. After exchanging pleasantries, Bamiyi and Edwok informed Abiola that Abacha had died 20 days earlier. Abiola contemplated the news in silence for several moments, then said a prayer for Abacha's soul. He then wrote a condolence letter to Abacha's widow Miriam and forwarded it to Abubakar for review and approval before sending it. In the letter, Abiola described Abacha as a friend and brother and assured Miriam that you and your entire family will always be considered by me and my whole family as friends, brothers, and sisters. As I assure your late husband, despite all he has done and will probably continue to do, I will never hate him. In my heart, my love for him will never diminish, because I know that Satan was the cause of the schism. Abiola had in the past written condolence letters to the Abachas from detention. When Abacha's sister died in November 1994, and when his son Ibrahim died in January 1996. Chief MKO Abiola's last moments were as controversial as his life. On July 7, 1998, he hosted death. Solim continued. A senior American diplomatic delegation, including the US, under Secretary of Political Affairs Thomas Pickering, Assistant Secretary for State for United Africa Susan Rice, and the Pentagon's Deputy Commander-in-Chief of European Command General James Jamieson, had arrived in Nigeria on July 6th. They met with General Abdulsalam Abubakar, the head of state at the time, Tom Ikimi, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Finance, Anthony Ani, and the Minister of Aviation, Air Commodore Ita Udo Ime, the following morning. The Americans urged General Abubakar to release Abiola and asked for permission to see him. Abubakar called his chief security officer, Major Abdurrashid Aliyu, and ordered him to bring Abiola to meet the Americans at Akinola Aguda House. Aliyu and Zadok picked Abiola up from his detention base shortly after 12:30 p.m. and took him to Aguda House. As well as guarding Abiola, Zadok also had the unenviable task of testing all of Abiola's food and drinks before he touched it. Zadok observed, "Before we all left the house, Chief MKO Abiola was in sound and healthy condition. He did not complain to me of any illness." When we arrived at Aguda House, Zadok received a radio message from the security controller telling him to go to the office of the Chief of General Staff, Vice Admiral Akibe. Zadok led Abiola inside Aguda House and left to see Akibe as instructed. The meeting between Abiola, Pickering, Rice, and the US Ambassador to Nigeria, William Twadell, started shortly after 1 p.m. Abiola appeared to be in good spirits and shared jokes with the Americans. He was wearing one of his trademark flowing white agbadas, which one person saw him chat that day described as beautiful. When the Americans asked him about his health, he replied that he felt good, apart from some swelling in his legs. He recognized Pickering, who was the US ambassador to Nigeria between 1981 and 1983, and greeted him warmly. Pickering recalled that Abiola looked robust and in good health, was big, and seemed not to have lost any serious amount of weight. Abiola chatted with the Americans. A steward came in after with refreshments, and Pickering and Twadell drank coffee, while Rice drank tea, which he also served to Abiola. Since Zadok was away, he was not present to taste Abiola's tea before it was served to him. As the guests took their drinks, Abiola started coughing and became incoherent as he talked. He asked to be excused to the bathroom. When he returned, he remained in discomfort and asked for cough medicine and painkillers. He then started having a lot of hot and cold flushes. At first, he complained of being cold, so the air conditioner was switched off. As his temperature began to rise, he removed his shirt and asked for the room to be ventilated. The windows were opened at his behest. The American delegation was surprised and realized that there was something truly wrong with Abiola when he, a Muslim, removed his shirt in the presence of a woman, Susan Rice, to whom he was not related to. Abiola felt so unwell that he lay down on the ground, and Susan Rice asked for a physician to be called. Major Aliyu called the Aso Rock doctor, Dr. Wali, who arrived less than 10 minutes later. For the second time in a month, Dr. Wali was summoned to the presidential villa to save the life of a severely ill VIP politician. Wali knew Abiola well, as well as being his patient. Abiola had also been a good friend of his since they met in the late 1960s at the Lagos University Teaching Hospital. Shortly afterwards, Zadok returned from his meeting with Akibe and was shocked to find Abiola ill and lying on the floor. Chief MKO Abiola died a month after Abacha, sealing the gates of Abacha's perpetual dictatorship ambition and MKO Abiola's presidency claims. It was officially reported that he allegedly died of a long-term heart disease. While several things have happened since then, including the investigation of MKO Abiola's death at the Oputa panel, June 12 being named Nigeria's Democracy Day, MKO Abiola's actual political interests and alliances remain mainly obscure to Nigerians. Like MKO Abiola, those alive through the period idealized him and what he was supposed to represent. MKO was Nigeria's ticket out of Babangida and Co's military rule. Still, MKO Abiola played essential roles in the military's return, and the irony is lost on a generation of Nigerians. Of course, this is not the entire life of Chief MKO Abiola, but I believe by now you start to get the gist of his person. I'm curious to know your thoughts about Chief MKO Abiola. Leave your comments down below. Don't forget to smash a like and subscribe to this channel. It's been Namdi from Afriverse. You have a good one.